Welcome back to the Podcast Quadrant. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
Which will be posted on a Monday.
All the days.
TGIF.
TGIS?
Am I right? TGIF? TGIS. They got it Sunday.
Okay.
Speaking of
LOL.
TGIF.
TGIF Fridays?
Ruby Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Hi, babe. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm excited we're finally recording. Quick rundown of our absences.
So
They're excused absences, okay?
yes.
We're not just cutting school.
We were given an abundant amount of excuse absences.
Yeah. I was sick.
You were sick?
And then there was a technical error.
Mercury was like in triple retrograde with our podcast technology.
Yeah, the Gatorade was in the oven.
For sure.
In the microwave.
For sure.
And then we had a car issue. We spent like a whole entire weekend trading in a lease, fixing a broken car. Then we at some point had 3 cars that we owned. We had to like caravan and return it, and it took a whole weekend.
So after we have like collectively have gathered our shit.
Yeah, we've gotten our shit together.
Kind of.
You will notice a new surrounding. That was another one. The dog peed on the rug in the podcast room.
Not to name names, Bethany.
Not to name names.
We're just gonna roll with the flow now.
I like this setup.
It's nice.
And it's a comfier couch. You don't look comfy though, however.
I'm figuring it out.
Okay.
I'm actually much more comfortable than the green couch.
Okay.
So.
Just don't move too much because the couch is
squeaky, and that's not gonna sound good.
No.
So
just figure it out how you're gonna sit, and I hope you're comfortable. Want to tell them what we're going over in this episode?
Yes, so this episode, we are strictly just going over Chapter 18. After doing a little bit of reviewing, we realized that Chapter 18 and 19, one episode was just going to be a doozy. And we didn't want to do that to you guys. No. So stay tuned. Immediately after Chapter 18, we will be recording a separate episode of just Chapter 19.
Yeah.
So that's going to be for you guys to be right back to back, so you don't have to wait as long, and then we're going right into Chapter 20 within the next couple of days. So strap yourselves in, because we're going to give these next 3 chapters right to you very, very soon, because we've been unfortunately cursed with all the things that have been happening.
Yeah.
So we want to catch you guys up, and we need to get rolling with this podcast and just dive more into Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing.
Do you think it's because we haven't had the podcast candle?
I was actually thinking about that last night, and I was like looking around our house. I'm like, where is it? So
it's literally on that table.
Is it really still?
The side table.
It could be, but I know we have not lit that podcast candle in a while,
right?
Because it gave you a headache.
Yeah, because it's one of the like fake scented candles.
Yeah. Where
it would give you a migraine.
We didn't light it at all during the video when we started video, and for the first 3, it was fine, and then all hell broke loose.
Well, we were like all set up good on Riverside, the app we used to record the video. And then they did an update, which if you have like official like equipment is great. But then it kind of made our like low budget 2 iPhone and Amazon mic setup like irrelevant and couldn't have that work. So that's why it's set up a little differently.
Right.
So it's great if you're like legit people.
And we're trying to be.
Right. This was pretty legit.
It's just not there yet.
Yeah, it's just like when your iPhone updates and the updates like outrace or outmatch your physical phone, and then it falls apart and you're like, oh, I guess I have to get a new phone now.
Yeah.
That's kind of what's happening.
So
we figured it out though, but
we are just trying to find.
Maybe we need a better candle, a non-toxic candle.
Non-toxic candle would be awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this episode goes.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's great and we sound good. That's the most important thing too, and that we can hopefully find a way where we can still use how we were doing video beforehand.
I think this video will be okay because it's for sure will be on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
So if you're watching on YouTube, follow, comment, like, all the things. And then we can just have horizontal video on TikTok and people can turn their phones or it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. Yeah. But before we dive into our Chapter 18 summary, is there any other way that our viewers can follow us and that sort of thing? What are we on, babe?
Yes, Instagram and TikTok, Podcast Quadrant. That is where you can find us on social medias. And then Nate's personal and my personal Instagram are also like tagged in those a lot. If you want to follow us personally. And then on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, which is now Google Podcasts if you're following along. Different platforms have different things, so follow or subscribe, whatever your thing is. Rate, review, comment, all of that stuff really does help us get noticed, and any engagement is good engagement. So even if you want to be like, I think your hair's frizzy. Okay, thanks for the engagement. Yeah. But I think we should give them a phrase, like, if they're watching and they comment to, like, help us out, what's, like, a random phrase they should? So it's like, if you know, you know. You know, what should they comment? Or, like, a random emoji or something. But just, like, you know, those people in the know. In the know.
Well, last episode we talked a lot about how Rebecca Yarros used the word celebrate instead of something else. Let's maybe, I don't know, that'd be kind of fun. Just if our viewers are celebrating by listening to our podcast, I don't know.
Or just
something silly like that.
What's the like celebration cone, like the little party popper?
Oh, little party popper, yeah.
I'll put in the description of stuff. Right. Comment that if you're listening and want to give us some engagement and help support the podcast. And I also had another order of business before we dive in. I have a new segment that I wanna add into some episodes. Okay.
Awesome.
Right now, I'm still workshopping the name.
Okay.
Okay, but right now I'm calling it Rebecca Watch.
Rebecca Watch.
Or Bex Watch.
Good deal.
Okay. Basically, it's news about Rebecca, what Rebecca is up to on social media.
Okay.
Have you been abreast of the situation?
You're gonna have to like help me out here. I don't know.
On her stories. Rebecca's personal Instagram. Okay, you know how we love her posts, how she's just so relatable, and she'll post like the biggest book news of the century.
Sure.
And then immediately back to posting at like a hockey game with her husband. Yep. So she's been traveling around for different awards. Like she was at like the Penn Awards in London and in the UK. And she posted a picture on her story on Instagram. And it was like her laptop open. Okay.
Oh, right. I did see this.
And like a gorgeous latte. Yeah. And she's like riding in a latte, in a coffee shop with a latte. And of course, us crazy internet people are like, zoom in.
Oh, I zoomed in.
Did you figure out what it said?
No, it was like blurry.
Okay, well the internet sleuths have like enhanced it and figured it out.
Yeah.
So it says, they all die. No, not really, but maybe. Stop zooming in. And when I tell you the journey that I went on reading this before I got to the stop zooming in part, I was like, they all die. Oh my God. Not really. But maybe. Oh my God. Stop zooming in. I was like,
that is awesome.
You really got me there.
Thank you.
You got us. And so everyone was like, wait, I can't read what it says. And we're like, don't worry. The internet has figured it out for you. And everyone's like joking, like, she chose violence.
She did.
But I mean,
she did create her, so that makes
sense.
But
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So Rebecca chose violence and is not giving us any hints. However, she did add a Halsey song to that post.
Which one?
That I don't know. It wasn't one I recognized, but everyone's like, the song is scaring me. And I'm like, I'm not that well versed in Halsey to know. But I do know, you know how Rebecca's a huge Swiftie. And Taylor Swift is famous for her Easter eggs and her little hints. So I know that she's trying to do stuff. Yeah, so Rebecca's like, you know, dropping her dragon eggs. And she also posted oh my gosh, the iPad always be falling asleep like this. On Spotify, she has a writing playlist.
Okay.
And people are trying to like decode the songs in there. And some of it might actually be like hints, or it might just be like Rebecca likes that song.
That's just her vibe.
But it's things like Taylor Swift, Halsey, Imagine Dragons, Flyleaf. Were you a Flyleaf fan in like 2008?
Never heard of it before in my life.
Billie Eilish, Imagine Dragons, Paramore, Taylor Swift, Bishop Briggs, a song from Twilight. Like,
why not?
I don't know what she's trying to do, and if like but then also like Beyonce, Run the World.
Sure.
You know, so I don't know like how much we read into this, or if it's literally just like Rebecca is like a Halsey stan. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's my. Do we like that segment?
That's a nice segment for sure. I think that's informative and it's like up to know with everything that's going on with Rebecca. And we can like be following along with all the lead up to Onyx Storm that's coming up. So I think that'd be really cool to just kind of keep tabs on.
There may not be ones every episode though, because she doesn't post that much, but like she does post, so
for sure
when things are relevant,
germane
to the topic.
Love it.
Did you have anything else before I get to the chapter 18 summary?
I don't think so. We're just catching up. We're trying to find and figure out new things. So we really love our fans and appreciate our fans from staying patient with us as we try to figure out everything. And like we keep saying every episode, we're trying to figure out a more consistent schedule to record, but we're happy to keep on doing it. So you are providing with our chapter 18 summary, which is sponsored by No one yet. So whoever wants to snag that, it is open.
I'm really good at ad reads.
You are very true. Before we get into it, let's kind of give our audience another rundown of like how the rest of the episode is going to go.
Spoiler alerts.
Right. So chapter 18 summary will be provided by Abby today, and you are good in terms of spoils up until chapter 18 of Fourth Wing. So if you have not read up to chapter 18, why are you here? Go back to our very first episode. We'll see you back. After chapter 18 summary, we are going to be kind of analyzing all of it from just Fourth Wing. So if you have read all of Fourth Wing, but not Iron Flame, you are still good.
Safe.
We're good. After we talk about everything that has to do with chapter 18 in the context of Fourth Wing, after that, we will be then kind of going over the bigger plot of theories that also covers Iron Flame. So if you have not read any part of Iron Flame, that is your time to skedaddle. We will give you clear warnings of when that is going to happen. And then, if you're good from there, then sweet. We'll keep hearing you, stick around, and then we're good from there. Yeah. So
awesome.
Without further ado.
All right. And as always, we will start with the epigraph that begins each chapter. And I have verified on Google that is the correct word for that. The quote or the excerpt from something in the beginning of the chapters.
Awesome.
It's called an epigraph.
Okay. Can we get started now?
Yeah.
We've been waiting forever.
Gosh, every time you're like, oh my god, when is it going to start? All right.
Are we good now?
And
go.
There is nothing more sacred than the archives. Even temples can be rebuilt, but books cannot be rewritten. Colonel Daxton's Guide to Excelling in the Scribe Quadrant. Violet meets Jasenia, her friend and scribe, in the archives, and Jasenia asks how the Writer's Quadrant is going. Violet tells her about bonding to her dragons, and that she is getting used to the danger. Jasenia gets the items Violet needed from the archives, except for one text that Jasenia couldn't find, the Fables of the Baron. The book is described as a collection of folklore that Violet's dad shared with her. It is a little on the dark side, and it has stories about wyvern venom, magic, and battles of good and evil. Professor Markham is in the archives with a class of first-year scribes. One student was complaining about there not being any fresh air in the archives, and Markham asked Violet to explain why. Violet says it's part of the fire mitigation system to keep the archives from burning down. She also explains that the hooded outfits are to make the scribes blend into the surroundings of the archives, because the documents are more important than anything else. Jasenia tells Violet how worried she is for her safety because of the attacks on the border and is clearly concerned for Violet. Next, Violet goes to lunch, where Riddick, Sawyer, and Rhiannon are talking about what happened at sparring earlier in the day. Sawyer's signet power manifested. Sawyer is a metallurgist, but since he can't control his power yet, he is wary of all metal items. Quinn and Imogen tell the others that if they don't manifest a signet power, within about 6 months, their power would consume them and make them explode. The crew walks to the flight field for flight lessons, and they walk past Jack Barlow and Carolyn Ashton, who just bonded with Glenn. Another flight after flight lessons with Taryn and Violet. Stop laughing! After flight lessons with Taryn and Violet,
collecting our thoughts.
Gather my thoughts. After flight lessons, Taryn and Violet have a mental conversation about she only fell a few dozen times today, and that Taryn keeps doing more challenging moves when Professor Kaori is only teaching simple maneuvers. Violet complains about never seeing Andarna and asks if she can join flight practice next time. Dane walks Violet back after practice because he needs to talk to her about something. He is really mad at her for not telling him that she can't stay on Terran's back during flight practice. Violet tells him her training with Imogen and all the things she's doing to get better and stronger. But he thinks Imogen has ulterior motives for helping because Xaden told her to train Violet. Violet and Dane argue about how she bent the rules to make it up the gauntlet and how he is still afraid she won't make it in the Riders' Quadrant. Violet meets up with Rhiannon and the guys when a fellow first-year Jeremiah starts screaming and clutching his head. He starts saying things that others are thinking out loud, and we learn his signet power is manifesting. He can read minds, and intrinsic. Xaden, Garrick, and Violet worry that he will read their thoughts and learn things they don't want him to know. Xaden used his shadows to cover Jeremiah in black bands and to cover his mouth for him to stop talking. Professor Carr pushes through the crowds around Jeremiah, grabs him by the head, and snaps his neck. Jeremiah falls to the ground and dies. Later that night, Violet dreams about her dad when Terran's voice wakes her up through her dream. Violet is being attacked in her dorm by Orin and other unbonded first-years. Terran helps her fight by talking to her in her mind. Violet is concerned about Orin and who's about to slit her throat when she hears Andarna's voice yell, "Mine," and then "Go." And everyone in the room is frozen in time.
Whew. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot in that episode.
Yeah. Lots of background info and lots of, action.
That was probably one of the, at least I remember first reading it, chapters that Rebecca left that chapter on a huge, cliffhanger. There were a couple other chapters previously in fourth reading. Threshing for sure was a little bit of a cliffhanger, but this one you're like, ugh. And you cannot wait to get to the next chapter, which I can already vision when they make this the series. Yeah. That will
this
for sure.
The end
that's
of
a
an episode.
perfect way to end an episode.
Yeah.
When you were first reading this book or this chapter, what were your thoughts? What were your emotions? What were you thinking about?
I honestly don't remember, and I was just thinking about that as I was writing the analysis part for chapter 18 and 19.
Mm-hmm.
Is I forget. Because, now rereading it, you know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then you forget what's, jaw-dropping, new revealed info. Because you're like, oh, I already knew that.
Sure.
But in the context of the book, reading it the first time, you forget that, you didn't know.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Kinda.
So, because I know that Andarna can stop time, it wasn't shocking, but obviously the first time you read it, you're like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But now that we know everything we know, it's still a good, scene, but it's not the same experience because it's not, a big reveal.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha.
You always talk about with that one movie, what's his name? Where he's in the insane asylum on the island.
Shutter Island?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, once you know the twist,
yeah.
and you watch it again, it's not a good movie.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
Once you know the big reveal, it's you don't care anymore.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying, but it is hard to, put yourself, to wipe your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember when I first heard it and was trying to visualize it in my brain, the most, one that I could, easily visualize was actually the scene of Jeremiah dying, because I can just I feel like I could see but almost feel that pain that he was describing with his head, with his signet manifesting, and then Professor Carr killing him. I could visualize almost ooh,
do you know
that's that's gruesome.
Yeah,
you can just oof.
Do you know what scene I pictured in my head? Because I'm bad at of course my mind blacks out during any action fight scenes. But sometimes I'll take scenes from other things and put them in this.
Okay.
Okay, so do you know what I mean? A scene I've already seen in another movie or something, or a show, and I equate it to this. Okay. So it's a mashup.
Okay.
It's when in Harry Potter where Malfoy is being rude in the little courtyard, and Mad-Eye comes in and turns him into a ferret. That's the same. It's the same vibe as this, because everyone's standing around, looking at Malfoy, looking at Jeremiah, what are you doing, right? And then a professor comes in and either snaps his neck, or turns him into a ferret.
That's the same thing. Turning into a ferret. Snap in your neck. That's definitely the same thing.
It's the same thing. That's what I picture.
What? Okay.
All right.
I don't want to be a weasel. Okay. Interesting. Well, with this episode, we get the introduction to a couple of new characters. Very first one is Jasenia.
Jasenia.
This is the first one that we...
right? Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
See, and that's what I'm like, I already know her, but
right.
then, like,
but this
the
is
readers...
The way that she's described, though, it's like every time like a new character is introduced, like with physical descriptions, so I'm pretty certain that this is the first time, when you first read Fourth Wing, this is chapter 18 is the first time you are introduced to Jasenia. So this is a big ordeal. What did you think about having a character that is like a heroine such as Violet that is actively like fluent in sign language in a book? Have you ever experienced that, or can you like in a fiction book?
No, honestly, the only fiction books that there have been characters that were deaf or hard of hearing and spoken ASL was like that's the main plot of the book.
Okay.
Like it is a book like True Biz, which is like a ASL like slang term, but that's the title of the book, about hearing children of deaf parents. Like that's a specific like culture in itself. So the book was specifically about that, but I've never had just like so casually, like it's not a big part of the plot. No one like has a big reveal or anything. It's just like normal. I love that because it's like that's not their whole personality of Jasenia and Violet is just like, yeah, of course I know sign language. Like, don't you?
It's like nonchalant and everything.
Yeah, I love that. And I think in all of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, Rebecca does a really good job of just like including diverse characters in all different ways. Gender, race, ethnicity,
language, ability.
Yeah, I think
backgrounds, like with that sort of thing. You learn later on of like Rhee has a much different upbringing than Violet's and that sort of deal.
Yeah, like socioeconomic things like that. And so I really like that. And I said instead of ASL, it's BSL, that's Gaia sign language.
Fun. That makes more sense.
Because it's
or
like,
Navarre, maybe more because that's the country. So. I got what you meant.
Gaia sign language. But yeah, I made a note about the diversity and inclusion throughout the books and just the casual, reference to signing is like
oh, that's cool. Sure.
And that whole scene with Jasenia in the archives ties into the epigraph about how important, how sacred the archives are. Temples can be rebuilt, but books cannot be rewritten.
Sure.
And then the example of Violet explaining why that it's like protected, why there's no fresh air circulating in there. Yeah. So I think she was a good way to tie that in and like give us info.
And obviously from the very, very beginning of Fourth Wing, you quickly understand that Jasenia is a major player in this whole grand scheme of the series, which we'll get to later. But this is now the first introduction that we've gotten to Jasenia.
Oh yeah, because she wrote the main or beginning of the book is from Jasenia,
right.
Which I remember experiencing that as you read it. You don't clock it because you don't know Jasenia when you read the very first page of the book. And then when you mention her, 18 chapters in, you don't remember. And that was literally one of those yeah. Someone had to point out.
Added a layer of surprise. So, yeah, it's not like and Rebecca obviously being super smart in her literature, puts that at the very beginning. Doesn't introduce that character until middle-ish of the book, until you forgot about it.
Yeah.
And it makes you go,
yeah, so it's either a reread if you're really observant, or someone on Instagram points it out to you.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
What did you have specifically from this specific scene of the chapter when it's with Violet and Jasenia and this whole little scribe scene?
Yeah. Well, I do too. I had a couple of things, so then jump in with your notes about the stuff as I bring it up. Yep. They talk about how, I thought it was interesting how Dragonfire is what could destroy the archives. And that opposite of temples can be rebuilt, but books cannot. And what can destroy a book is a dragon. And the opposites again of dragon strength and physical strength versus knowledge and literary power. of those two different things, and how we just get that like they're pitted against each other again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. That's very observant. This goes with your strength versus weakness, or what is true power.
Yeah, not necessarily strength versus weakness, but like everything is in a balance.
Yeah.
They have the kind of like a checks and balance. Like the dragons are so powerful that they could destroy the only thing that could destroy the archives, but the archives' knowledge is so powerful that then it kind of is more powerful than the dragon's like physical thing, but it's like they could destroy each other.
Right.
And I think that's very like poetic. I also had notes about Jasinia's concern for Violet, and we started getting little Easter eggs that dragon eggs, that maybe the scribes know more than they're letting on, or know more than the writers, where she talks about the upticks and attacks along the border, and she's concerned for Violet, and Violet's like, yeah, I know, we hear about it in Battle Brief, but we kind of, knowing what we know, they may not be getting everything in Battle Brief, but all the actual, like, true reports come through the scribes. Right. So Justinia might actually be like, nah, girl, there's more going on that you don't know about. Violet starts listing, like, what the reports are: striking at faltering wards, ransacking villages high in the mountains, and more dead riders. And part of her shuts down with each attack that she has to analyze. That's, dragon eggs, of course, for, like, the attack, the griffin attack high in the altitude later on.
Definitely.
Did you have anything about that? I had a whole separate section for Fables of the Baron.
Yeah, I dive in deep into that too, but I remember specifically reading, like, when Markham comes in, kind of like into that scene as well. Yeah. It gets a little, like, more unusually tense, even for a first time when I read this book, and I don't know everything about Markham yet, so I won't dive into that. But you can even tell within the description of how Justinia is and how Violet and Justinia's conversation is. It's not just like, oh, when a professor walks by and you're having a conversation with a friend, you might just like acknowledge them and say, hi, Professor, whatever. Like, you can kind of tell within the words that they're like stiffened up, like they're like tense. I just got that vibe. So that was kind of like a trigger in my brain. I was like, who is this, like, Professor Markham? Like, what you about? But the other interesting thing was, like, when Violet sees Justinia, she's, like, overcome with, like, happiness because she grew up with him and studied with her and studying. And in Justinia's way, like, she doesn't, like, reciprocate in the same way. And it says, like, in the book that scribes shouldn't lose composure. Like, they're meant to be very, very stoic and very, like, just neutral, I guess. Studious. And I was like, why? I guess because, like, why is that necessary for the scribes? I get a lot of other rules that they talk about with the scribe quadrant. Like, yes, we don't have windows. We don't have a whole lot of fresh air. You have these hoods for a specific reason. But why the composure?
I think it's part of why they have the hoods. To blend in, because you're not supposed, like, it takes away your individuality and your expression, because it's not about you, it's about, like, the knowledge and the books and the information. And so you're not there for, like, yourself, you're not there for, like, personal glory, you're there as, like, kind of, like, to tend to the books and the knowledge. I feel like that's a common kind of thing in a lot of very, like, studious, like, learned, like, situations where you, like, wipe away yourself. Like, I think, again, I'm comparing it to other, like, fandoms, but, like, in Game of Thrones, when Sam goes to
the Citadel to become,
they're all wearing those robes. They're kind of almost monk-like, where they don't have their own possessions. They don't have, like, the maesters they don't marry. They're kind of married to the knowledge in a way, like a monk married to the religion. In that kind of way, where it's like stripping away the self. So I think that's why. And then also, if you're gonna be like a faithful, like, transcriber of, like, history, you have to, like, report the facts.
And you get involved with emotion. You can't let emotion dictate history.
Right, you can't let the spin on it. You can't have an opinion. You're supposed to be neutral. So I think that's why.
I got you. I have a different theory, but I'm going to save it for later because it's an iron flame. But
Okay.
I want to dive.
We'll
come back to that. I want to dive into the missing book.
Yeah.
The missing book.
Yeah. I have the quote of Violet explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
She said, for Fables of the Baron, she says, "It's not for academics or anything, just a collection of folklore my dad shared with me. A little on the dark side, honestly, but I love it. I think for a moment. There's no sign for wyvern or venom, so I spell them out. Wyvern, venom, magic, battles of good and evil. You know, the good stuff."
Sure.
And then another description of it says that it's folk tales of what happens when humans defile power channeled to them.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt they were written as a parable to warn us of the dangers of bonding dragons, but in Navarre's 600-year history of reunification, I've never read of a single writer losing their soul to the powers. The dragons keep us from that.
Mm-hmm.
So that describes the book, which, knowing what we know, it's not just folklore. I think in other times it's more appropriate to dig into like her dad giving it to her and what that means. Mm-hmm. But I think the part that's important to focus on here is that it's not in the archives.
Right.
Is it really, or is Justinia like not finding it? Wink, wink.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I'm wondering if this is one of those situations where, like, I think two like possible options are out there. Where yes, Justinia can't find it, wink, wink, secretly does have it. It's not safe to give it to her right.
You think Justinia makes that call?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's out there that, like, Mira had it the whole time or something like that, right? Something like that. Because remember the very beginning of the book? Mm-hmm. Yeah, very beginning, first chapter, before Violet crosses the parapet, she's with Mira and she gives
they call out the books from her backpack.
Right.
Yeah.
And even gives over one of those like books that has
and now Mira has it.
And now Mira has it.
Yeah.
So is she looking for the original or just like any version? Because another quote is on page 210 from Violet. Says, quote, "Archives should have a copy or original of every text. Only ultra rare or forbidden tomes are excluded." So she's thinking, at least get me the original, because maybe she only has a copy.
Yeah, I don't think the one she
like
has
that.
the original, but then you make it think, okay, maybe that's literally the only copy. Because also, like, no one else seems to know about it, but, no, I take that back, because Rhiannon knows about it.
Right, Rhiannon knows about it.
I don't think that's, like, the only copy. I think it might be, like, a banned book kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and it might be, I'm picturing, I know it's the archives and they don't have, like, computers, but I picture Justinia, like, going to look up in the card catalog of the library, and she types in Fables of the Baron, and then, like, some FBI alert goes off. You know what I mean? Like, that now she's on the watch list, and they're like, sorry, we don't know this book. We don't have this book. Like, that's what I picture happening. So Justinia didn't make that call. It's kind of like the forbidden section at Hogwarts, you know? That,
and I pictured the old, like, librarian lady in Star Wars who's trying to help Obi-Wan Kenobi, and she's like, if something does not exist in our records, then it does not exist.
Yeah, the little...
And then, like, a scene later, the young Jedi is like, Master, it's because someone deleted it from the archive memory. And Obi-Wan's like, gosh, this child is smarter than me. How embarrassing.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that. Where I don't think Justinia is doing it on purpose. She might be like a cog in a machine that's like, oh, error, we can't find the book. Wink, wink, because we don't want people to know about it.
Right.
Or forbidden. It could just be that it's forbidden in that way, and the dad who worked in the archives had a copy, was trying to be like, you need to know about this, and this is the way I'm going to tell you about it. Oh, I had that quote too about how there's almost every book in the archive. Yep. She did see, though, other like creatures like Chimera and Kraken, but Wyvern or Venom, bizarre. Yeah. So I was like, oh, are we going to get some Chimera and Kraken later on?
That'd be fun.
Kraken is like water.
Kind of like
a giant octopus. And then Chimera is, honestly, the only time I ever heard that is from Teen Wolf, when they remade Teen Wolf, and one of the creatures is a chimera.
Okay.
Chimera. If you're looking it up.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up because I need to.
And it was kind of along the same lines as, like, how the wyvern are created by a venom, but a chimera is kind of like a lizardy looking person thing, but it's like controlled by another person, which is like a common mythical creature, like in Wednesday, you know how.
Right. How do you spell it?
CHI.
CHI.
ERA. So that's, I don't know exactly, but I just know it's like controlled by another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a combo of creatures.
So a lot of mythology pictures here have it sort of as a combination of lion, snake, and goat.
Okay. Yeah, just like squished together different animals.
Yeah.
But does it have anything about it being controlled by something?
An imaginary monster component of different parts, an illusion of fabrication of the mind, especially an unrealizable dream, fancy, a chimera in my brain troubles me in my prayer.
Okay, so maybe it's not controlled by another person, but it's like a subconscious kind of thing?
Without it being a mythological creature, it means a strange, horrible, or impossible idea or figment of the imagination.
Well, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting that in the list of wyvern and venom, she mentioned these two others and was like, they're not real, and you know, anything that they say for certain, like...
Here we go. So in Greek mythology, a chimera is a fire-breathing monster with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent.
Sure.
That's where we're at right now.
Okay.
So,
Anywho.
But that's fine. But wyvern, just a dragon, just with only 2 wings and 2 legs. Oh no, don't talk about that witchcraft.
Yeah, witchcraft. So I don't know, be on the lookout for that in a couple books, maybe.
Maybe next book.
Or they could just be like, Kraken, that's so obviously not real, and puts it in the list with wyvern and venom to like send you off the trail.
Classic Rebecca.
Yeah. Okay.
Here we go.
This description, I have a new word to add to my list of banned words that I never want to hear.
Or sayings, yeah.
Do you know what I'm about to say?
Probably, but go ahead.
Tomes.
The
just
forbidden
tomes. It's a book. I'm sorry. It's a book.
Mm-hmm.
A big book. A large book. A heavy book. It's not a tome. Gross. It gives me the ick. I have a tome ick.
Moist.
Stop. It's not necessarily the sound of the word, like moist. It's the like type of person that uses that word. Like, I think they're so literary. I'm just like so scholarly and so smart. I have to call it a tome. Like, they would use the word cornucopia. You know what I mean? Superfluous amount, copious amounts of tomes.
Sporadic.
It's the same energy, and Rebecca, it's on my list.
On your list.
Banned words for Rebecca.
We're making our own blacklist.
Yes, tomes.
Alright.
That's all I had about the archives, really.
Yeah, I'm ready to go back to it, but it'll be during our Iron Flame segment. So we're going to move on later into chapter 18. The next scene that is happening is about the cafeteria.
Sorry, I was trying not to yawn.
Rude. Violet's in the cafeteria, and she's sitting down with her friends, and we learn about our first signets.
Woo!
So Sawyer has the ability to manipulate metal.
Yes.
And he's talking about how he would, on accident, basically turn a spoon, I think, or some sort of metal utensil into a sword.
No.
Or something like that.
Okay, he was sparring.
Right.
And he had a sword.
Right.
And it, like, bent to almost, like, injure something.
Impale his
And
opponent,
he was like, I didn't mean to do that. And then he immediately got whisked away by Professor Carr to start working on his signet. And then the part about the spoon or the fork is like, he's afraid
at dinner right now.
Yeah, or at lunch. He's afraid to eat with a metal utensil because it might turn against him and stab him in the mouth.
Right. Earlier we learned that when you have a signet and it comes early, it means you have once you get your signet, once you have a very strong connection. And so since Sawyer is the first one of the group that we know of that has manifested his signet, he must have a really strong connection with his dragon. Does that hold any kind of like importance or weight to you? I feel like it kind of does, because Sawyer's like, he's like in the core of Violet's friends and everything.
He's in the squad.
He's in the squad.
I don't necessarily know that it's like a good connection with your dragon in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you have that kind of importance of, all right, we're a tight knit unit. We're Iron Squad. We kind of like all need to, pull our resources together to help each other out and to survive.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the vibe we're starting now to get, where okay, we're the Iron Squad. We're all friends. We just want to make it to graduation and just survive. So I think these alliances are no longer just alliances; they're now friendships. But then the alliances part of it kind of come into play when signet powers are now a thing, because they're used as weapons.
It's just like between you and your dragon. And what they say, what Quinn explains, is you manifest your signet when your dragon is ready to trust you with that power.
Right.
So I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, the stronger the bond, the sooner you get it. It's like that level of trust and maybe like strength. Like they just bonded really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I honestly didn't think it was like that deep.
Well, I mean, I thought it was, so that's why I commented on it.
Okay, and I'm commenting that I don't think it's that deep.
But then you quickly go into the warning part of it, of the signets, and like when they sit down, Imogen and Quinn kind of give out the warning of you really want to manifest your signet quickly, or else you might explode.
Oh yeah, the magic consumes you, and if you don't like express it.
Was that ever a worry for you? At least, obviously not for Violet, but for like some of the characters were like, oh wow, we might just could lose anybody just because they can't manifest her power.
I took it more as like a hazing thing. Like, sure, it could happen, but it might be. It's so rare, and then like Quinn and Imogen are just kind of like messing with them.
Okay.
I wasn't ever actually like threatened or worried about this as being like a real threat that could actually happen. I mean, it does add a little like bit of a time crunch.
A little drama.
It takes a little while for Violet to get her signet, but no, I was more just like, it's just like a spooky legend that Imogen and Quinn are like telling them to mess with them.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Anything else about lunch?
No, nothing more than lunch.
Okay. Next, they are at flight practice, and I believe this is when Taryn starts calling her Silver One.
He's always called her Silver One.
But, like, we talk about it. Violet says, eventually you could call me Violet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, like, clocked more times where he called her Silver One, and then the next chapter, he calls Andarna Golden One.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started like noticing it more, and Violet like comments on it a lot, and especially was like, okay, why don't you just call me Violet? And he was like, no, I do what I want. We get a little Taryn versus Dane thing when Dane approaches. Quote, is a growl rumbles through Taryn's chest above me and vibrates my bones. She hasn't even seen Dane yet. I pivot, my hands hovering along my sheathed daggers as Dane approaches. It's just Dane. Girl, you should listen to that dragon.
No, you should listen to that dragon. Before we dive deep into that, I remember that when you talked about Glenn, the dragon, rebonding, and rebonds this time with a friend called Caroline Ashton, who's a friend of Jack. Going forward, should we be worried about that? Is that something that we need to clock? Or did you clock that as a thing of like, oh, this is the first time Caroline being a friend of Jack. F you, Jack.
I mean, we don't like Jack, and it's clear she was poaching the unbonded dragons. Okay. But
nothing more to read. I kind of take everything that is within the inner circle of Jack, knowing everything we know. I'm thinking everything that is around Jack to be like somewhat importance.
I can't clock anything.
Okay.
I don't remember anything with Caroline.
I don't know if there's anything specifically with Caroline. I just think it could come up later, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
but I'll talk about that. Thing? Could be an Iron Flame thing, so I'll save it for when we were talking about Taryn and how they were in the flight field and flying around, I took note of it that how Taryn specifies to Violet that he is training her for battle. And he's also probably the most battle-tested dragon because of how much action he's seen. So he knows, obviously, what he's doing. But do you think this is also foreshadowing what's to come in Fourth Wing? That he's like, Taryn has an idea of what's coming. Okay.
Like, I know what's actually out there, so I know what you need to practice. You don't need to be doing these, like, fancy, like, show tunes. You know, you need to be doing these, like, actual, like, legit
maneuvers.
Training. Because, you know, he knows maybe a little more. And it's just like, I'm not going to play around. You need to be, like, ready. You know, her falling off. And that whole thing of, like, that's why Dane wants to talk to her. And honestly, I think Dane's mad at her for no reason. Sorry.
Do you want to get you a cup of coffee?
I feel like maybe I'm, like, not breathing right or something.
Breathe in. Breathe.
Okay.
Maybe we need a cup of coffee to be, you know, to help you. And maybe we need a coffee people to sponsor us to get this going.
I'm good. Okay.
All right,
no, Dane's mad at her because...
Just dropped the dragon.
You just dropped my dragon on the floor.
I'm sorry.
For not telling him she was falling off the dragon. First of all, it's not like it's a secret. It's not like he asked, "Are you falling off?" and she said no. Literally, everyone knows. Where have you been? Why are you not paying attention? I don't know. It was just like such an annoying fight. And she said, I keep forgetting this is my best friend. I was like, you and me both, sister. I keep forgetting you're friends with him too. I keep forgetting that he's a friend because he's not acting it's not very friendly of him right now. And says that he's so focused on the least she's capable of doing that he can't believe I could do so much more. And that's just, like, the worst. You know, and he's the good guy syndrome, where he's like, but I'm a good guy. And it's like, okay, but you're, like, not doing anything extra to be helpful. And you're neutral, which does not help. Like, you are trying to protect her because you don't think she can do it, but, like, that's actually harmful. Do you know what I mean?
For sure.
And...
Okay.
That's all I've got.
So, obviously, I love Taryn's threat to Dane. I think it just even magnifies the total opposition between Dane and Xaden of how even, like, and that was reflected in Threshing. Yeah. And now it's, like, even more so here. So it's just, like, one of these things where you kind of have, like, the animal aspect of even a dragon that they can just he either knows or he is just sensing that Dane's just a bad dude. Like, Dane's not with the right crowd. Yeah. And maybe Taryn does know way more, but he's not gonna.
Taryn's, like, gonna protect her, but also be like, I know you have to come to this realization on your own, and he is a friend. You know, he's not gonna be like, don't be friends with him, I can't explain to you why. That's not going to work. And he's going to protect her, like, when it comes down, Taryn. When it comes down to it, and going to give her a little, like, I'm going to tell you how I feel about it. But, like, in a age-appropriate way, right, of letting her figure it out on her own. Because if Taryn was just, like, disown your friend, alleged friend, of course, Violet's going to be like, nah.
I thought that the build-up and the climax of this last argument between Dane and Violet, was almost a Violet crossing a threshold moment for her, where she kind of was at that moment just right after Threshing, when she kind of was talking to him in the hallway, right before she's trained with Imogen. But now this is more of like, no, Violet is standing up for herself vocally, and is now saying, no, Dane, we are never, ever going to be a thing now, because it's not just because of the feelings, but it's because you are so vocal about, I would rather lose a friend than break a rule, or even bend a rule. And that's what sends her, and that's like in page 218.
Is that the cuts off the bullshit?
Cuts all the bullshit, where she re-quotes him.
Yeah, he said, this place cuts away the bullshit and the niceties, revealing whoever you are at your core. Forgive me, but you're about to use some of the bullshit this place cuts away from me.
That was great. That was kind of a moment where we've all been waiting for. Not just like that she hated the kiss, not that she just thinks that this is a weird and bad situation just to be near Dane, but she's like ready to cut him out of his life. Out of her life.
He is just a girl. Run over him with your car. Yeah.
So that was a big threshold moment for sure. I thought it was.
In that conversation when Taryn leaves, I had LOL sheep.
Right, sheep.
I'm hungry. I think I'll partake in a flock of sheep. Okay.
That was a herd of sheep. Or
Flock.
is it a flock of sheep?
Hello.
I thought a flock was like birds.
Tending your flock.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
from the Bible?
No, you're right.
Okay.
Totally went over my head.
And then I don't know who this is in reference to, but Violet flipped someone the middle finger.
Xaden.
Okay. Flips him the middle finger. And I said, not the middle finger.
Yeah.
Not
218,
the
quote,
middle finger.
Zayden arches a dark eyebrow as I pass by. I flip him the middle finger.
Not the
I'm not
middle.
taking his shit today either.
Yeah, take that. Not
two,
the finger.
2 lines. She flips him the middle finger, and she's the one that's flipping the middle finger to Zayden, and Rhiannon asks, is everything okay? And then the first thing that Violet says is, Dane's an ass. So flipping the middle finger to Zayden, but he's not the problem.
No.
Love it.
It's Dane.
It's Dane.
But I just, so classic saying a bad word, but not really saying a bad word. Like, he flipped him off. And then
Give him the bird.
Yeah. Like,
You know.
what other euphemism for flipping them off can we, you know what I mean? I gave him the finger.
Give him the
Like,
bird.
I know, I'm just saying. It's
Exchanging
like
relations.
classic, it's just classic Rebecca. And at least, I don't know, I can't decide if it's better or worse than in, like, Akatar and Sarah J. Maas books, where she says a vulgar gesture. She doesn't even say flip them off or something, and I just can never, like, what is that? A vulgar gesture. And I know people, one of their complaints about, like, the sex scenes and the cussing in Fourth Wing is that, and you kind of said this too, it takes you out of, like, the time period, which, again, it's not Earth, it's not any time frame, modern era, or, like,
Right.
year that we can pinpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know, like, yes, cuss words have evolved, and, like, things that people used to say, you know, in the 1700s that were offensive may not be offensive now, or it's just
Other way
changed.
around.
So you could definitely, like, kind of, you know, call yourself out, and, like, if this was placed in the 1700s and they used a cuss word that people use now that they didn't use then, it would be so obvious that it's anachronistic. And so
But you're in your own made-up world.
right, so maybe
You write the
that's
rules.
why, like, in Akatar, which is very, like, almost medieval feeling with, like, there's not really power and that kind of thing, where there's, like, a cook that makes bread and they have chambers and these gowns, and it's very, like, yield times where they would say a vulgar gesture, you know, which could be anything, but then flip him the finger, like, I don't know, it just doesn't go.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I got you. It's just funny because I was just thinking of, like, what you're saying. Oh yeah, flip him the middle finger. Give him the bird. Keep up with international relations. And this is a scene from Top Gun where Goose is explaining, like, what they did to communicate with the enemy. It's just, that's what it made me think of with this scene.
Okay,
Goose to the commanding officer is like, you know, the finger.
Okay, I didn't.
That's an
remember
iconic.
it.
That's an iconic scene. So
Someone else will get that.
From this scene, I found a dragon egg, and we haven't discussed it yet.
Okay.
It's on page 214, about halfway down, and I'll just start reading the quote. So, page 214, Violet speaking probably internally to Taryn.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, eventually you could call me Violet, you know. And then she stopped talking. I take the time to examine every row of his scales. She's talking about Taryn. They have already landed.
Right.
One of the biggest dangers to dragons are the smallest things they can't remove that penetrate between the scales, causing infection. Interesting of how that is placed in there. She could have just, like, Rebecca could have just said, oh, I'm just checking to make sure he's okay, making sure there's, like, no scratches or anything like that. But it's funny, and this kind of goes from the, like, power bounces of how large dragons are, but it's the smallest things that could kill them.
Yeah.
Where you can also compare that to, like, many other things where you could say maybe, like, these venom people are very large. We don't know. We don't get, like, I don't think super accurate descriptions in terms of comparison of how large venom are or if they're just normal size, but they are extremely powerful. And Violet throughout the entire series is considered small.
Yeah.
But maybe the smallest is also the deadliest.
Yeah.
Just a little dragon egg that
So
I
you
thought
mean
in
more
there.
like in like a metaphorical.
Maybe metaphorical way, or also just in a metaphorical way.
Okay.
Just always make it fun. So rude.
The metaphorical way.
Shut up.
Okay, so you don't mean literally a splinter.
I think, but it could be because it says in there that it could literally be like the most dangerous thing to dragons. It isn't the large wyvern that's hundreds of miles away. It could be the smallest things that are out there that are the most dangerous.
Right.
We just don't know.
So you're saying metaphorically.
And literally.
Okay, but literally that sentence is like, dragon care.
I also think because I think it's a dragon egg where it could be something where later on we have to be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
Of like what is small that could penetrate dragon scale, because all the swords that Violet has been attacked with when she's wearing her dragon scale armor aren't penetrating. Like they're all like dull swords or whatever, or they just don't work. So now it's like the small minute weapons that we have to be on the lookout for. Like that could be a real problem for dragons. It could be a problem for Terran. It could be a problem for Sigale or Andarna.
Yeah, any dragon.
So that's something just to keep note of.
Yeah. And I think the sentence literally means like a tiny little splinter could get in his paw and infect him. And that's like the surface content of that thing is like, this is how she was taught to care for her dragon. But then that's what I mean, surface level, and then metaphorically speaking is tiny things.
Right.
Not just a splinter, but like Violet is small. Could be the downfall of something. Yeah.
So that's what I was going for.
Interesting. I like it.
Alright. So after the argument with Dane, Violet has moved on. I think they're now back in the courtyard in the rotunda.
Yeah.
And this gruesome scene happens.
Yeah. The spicy chiropractor.
The spicy No.
Professor Carr's spicy chiropractor.
With a bag of chips. Oh.
Yeah, it gets the spicy adjustment from Professor Carr.
There's one of our meme pictures without context.
Yeah. Just a chiropractor.
Alright, so gruesome visual scene with Jeremiah, but it's something that I thought Rebecca did a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's a good scene.
Did a great job of helping her readers visualize it with her word choice. So this was really good. But this is our first thing of our second signet that we are newly introduced to. We obviously know of other signets, but a new signet that is brought up is the intrinsic. And I remember reading this chapter and okay, intrinsic can read minds. In other kind of worlds that are out there, reading minds is a very kind of known superpower or power in a way. It's not common, but it's known. But then how in this series and in this context of the scene, it's forbidden. It's a capital offense. Must be put to death. Not just have a trial or put you a noose around your neck. You're dead immediately. Yeah. What do you think of that concept? Obviously, with knowing everything, I understand it. But just with everything, I don't know. It's just interesting.
Well, I think it goes to the whole knowledge is power thing. Because in intrinsic, what do they have? Knowledge of what everyone knows and what everyone's thinking. And if you're trying to keep secrets, who are you going to go after? People that know things. Or could find out things. What kind of leadership traditionally goes after knowledge? News, books, information, communication. Question. What kind of governments and leaders do that?
Dictators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're I want the only news source to come from official channels of that I can censor and we can put out propaganda. We're going to limit access to knowledge, limit access to books the Baron, Fables of the Baron.
Yep.
We're going to, people that are too smart, we're either going to try and turn them into us to work for us and censor that information, or we're going to kill you.
Right.
And I think that is it wasn't just oh, we need to put this scene in here for no reason. I think it going in the chapter about how nothing else can be replaced, or things can be replaced except books, which is knowledge, and the book, the Fables of the Baron, not being found, and then someone that can read minds and gain more knowledge is killed. It's all all in the same chapter. It was not a mistake. It's all censorship and controlling the narrative kind of thing. So I definitely it's again layered, scary because it's kind of a cutthroat place. You either manifest your signet and get killed because you're not allowed to have that signet power, or you don't manifest the signet power and then you explode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like dangerous all around.
Yep.
Kind of like, ups the drama
Mm-hmm.
and like the time crunch of everything. But then it also is like, here's what that means like underneath it. Read between the lines, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah.
That was such a informative chapter from the aspect of like, okay, intrinsics are bad. Capital offense. And I remember talking about it with you previously about, with the signet and how it's manifested and how it's decided. And we'll get to this like later on of how other signets are decided. It's that bond. It's the combination of what the dragon trusts you with, but what is also in what the writer is in need of and what the character is in need of. So for some reason, and obviously we don't know Jeremiah, and he's dead now, so we're not going to learn much more.
Right.
But for some reason, he needed information. Or that was something that he missed or something he was needing of. So that was interesting, but obviously he's dead now, so there's nothing much more to dive into.
I don't even know who his dragon was. You know what I mean?
No, I don't even know that.
So I understand where you'd be like, what was that connection? Why did he get that power?
Right.
But I think since we don't have any more info, it's kind of like a misleading thing
mm-hmm.
to look into. I think the purpose of that part was just to tell us about like the lengths they'll go to like
get rid
control
of
the narrative.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. And then we also in that part where is it Garrett and Xaden are like, he'll know about the...
Yes.
And, like, almost spills the beans.
Almost spills the beans. Xaden's, I think, like, shadows got to his mouth in time, or he died.
No, before he did that, like, the shadows swirled around him and, like, covered his mouth, like, with a shadow arm, kind of, to keep him from talking before
It was the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before Professor Carr, like, gets to him. And I was like, Professor Carr knows some stuff that he doesn't want to get out.
Right.
And then Xaden and Garrick, is it Garrick? Whoever is there.
Garrick and Bodhi are there with Xaden.
They're like, we don't want him to know about stuff either, so they all had like their own reasons for not wanting him to read their minds.
For sure. Yep.
And so it just tells us that there's info that we're missing from Xaden. I didn't have anything else about...
Not for fourth one. No.
Let's see. Okay, next we get to Violet's a dream, and her dad telling her you always have to check the sources, and they're in the archives. Remember that first-hand accounts are always more accurate, but you have to look deeper, Violet. You have to see who is telling the story. So,
did you catch that? Obviously, if you're hearing it, so through an audible, you don't catch it, but on the book, the who is italicized.
Oh.
I don't think just because we're putting emphasis on the who. I think it's because that's essentially what it does.
That's what it does.
That's what it does. It penetrates more of like, you have to be very, very intentional of what you're reading, who is it written by, and why are they writing it.
Which I feel like is just media literacy 101.
Yes, it is. Like, but in the context of Fourth Wing.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's not like groundbreaking. It's not like a groundbreaking framework to look at information.
Correct. And look at it correctly.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not a new way of thinking. Like, that's literally like any research class you have. Right. And either it's like, well, was this someone's journal? Was this someone's interview? Or was this like some gossip about it?
Right.
Or was this like someone told someone who wrote it down? That's kind of like a classic. I don't know. To me, having come from like higher education, I was like, well, yeah.
Duh.
You know what I mean? But I guess like depending on that, or you think, oh, that's also true in this world as well. And again, with the chapter about the archives being important and not being able to find the fables of the Baron and Jeremiah getting his neck broken, I think that was important that this... What also came up in this same chapter, because it's all like, what do these things have in common? And it seems kind of random. I do remember that when I first read it. I was like, there's like 7 random things happening in this chapter. What the hell does this have to do with anything?
Right.
But it actually does all go together. And it could be, we talk about who's telling the story. Is it the person who was there? Or also, is the intrinsic reading the mind?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's the source?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just said interesting.
It is.
And then the attack, she starts to get attacked, and again, my mind fuzzed out, so I couldn't tell you who was attacking who the weapons were, where they were in the room. I can't tell you that.
I could, and I was stressed.
Well,
I
yeah,
was
I was stressed.
so stressed.
Yeah, but I was also like, they fight. Okay,
They
the end.
fight.
Violet was sleeping, they attacked her, then they froze. Okay.
Okay.
Like, that's the broad interpretation of it in my mind. And then my question, because Taryn's talking to her, like, wake up, wake up.
Yep.
How does Taryn know what's going on if Violet is not talking to him?
Yeah.
Because he was like, on your right, duck, turn around. Don't be up against that wall.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, Violet isn't telling him, so-and-so's over here. So, and Taryn is seeing things that Violet doesn't see in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does that work?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question. I think it just has to go further along the mystery that is Taryn and his own power and ability. Not just by being a dragon, but by him being powerful in his own way. This goes along with how he has said that he can see her memories. Or has seen her memories that we talked about a couple of chapters ago.
Oh.
Remember that?
No.
You
but
don't.
I believe you.
You
That Taryn can see the memories? I'm sorry, it's not that for a second.
We talked about that in the previous chapter.
I believe that we did that, I just don't remember.
So there is more. There's a lot more to Taryn than what has been revealed in terms of he's not just a powerful, I can breathe a lot of fire type of dragon.
He knows things.
He has other abilities that maybe other dragons don't have, or if he's not, and a lot of other dragons have these abilities.
Is this a dragon thing or is this a Taryn?
That's the question that I need answered.
But at first I was like, wait a second, how does he? What's happening?
Right.
Because I get, like, he maybe could sense she's in danger. Right? Like, talk about, like, twins being like, oh, I could tell you were hurting. Or
the
whatever.
Connection,
A connection.
The bond.
But it got so specific in this chapter of, like, on your left, turn around.
Yeah.
That I was like, how does he know that?
Yeah.
So, and then that's kind of the end. It freezes, and then I had a lot of stuff about Andarna's power and the time-stopping thing in the next chapter, because that's when really we get to the bulk of it. But anything you had in general that they start to talk about in this chapter, or just, like, the reveal of, like, freezing time? We don't even know it's Andarna yet in this chapter.
We don't?
No, she's just like, and then everything is frozen.
We know that on page 222, quote, mine, Andarna screams. Go, Andarna demands.
Yeah.
That's still in chapter 18.
And then things freeze.
I blink and realize the first sphere in front of me doesn't. She isn't breathing, isn't moving. No one is. Everyone in this room is frozen in place except me. That's the end of the chapter.
Right.
So we know people are frozen.
Andarna's on the scene, or Andarna has, entered the chat, and things are frozen.
Right.
The mental chat, and things are frozen. We don't necessarily know Andarna was...
We also don't know that she had stopped time necessarily in this chapter. For all we could have known at the time, she was just able to freeze people, but time is still going.
Well, we don't even know it's Andarna, is what I'm saying.
Right. We don't know that. Well, I think it's insinuated. Because,
I don't think so.
Why does she scream mine, Andarna?
I can talk about that in the next one, but I was thinking that Andarna's like, I've got this. Like when you're playing sports, you call a ball. But also could be Violet's mine. Don't mess with her. Or it could be like, I've got it. This is mine. Like, give me this fight. I'll help you.
Is it because the quote before Andarna, not like the text, but the only other audible quote that is right before Andarna is Orin hissing in Violet's ear is, your dragon is mine. And then there's like a lot of like text description of what's happening in the scene.
Yeah.
And then Andarna screams, mine. I don't know. Maybe.
Like Violet's mine.
Could be.
Or it could be like, I've got this under control.
Could be, yeah. That's the only thing I could think of. But when I heard that, even for a second I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
What are you saying?
Yeah, and I don't think we really get clarity.
No.
But I feel as though maybe if you read between the lines at the end of this chapter, you could have suspicions that Andarna is doing this, but it's not like outright said or confirmed or explained what's going on until chapter 19.
Right.
So I wasn't going to dig into it for this episode because I felt like it was more like, it made more sense to talk about it in 19.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. In the context of Fourth Wing, do you have anything more?
No, I don't have anything else.
All right. So, for our audience, if you have not read even the first page of Iron Flame.
No, you need to have read all of Iron Flame.
Right, that's what I'm saying. If you haven't even gotten there. But yeah, if you haven't read the last page of Iron Flame. If you haven't not read the last page of Iron Flame, this is your time to skedaddle.
Get out of here.
We will catch you on the next episode for chapter 19. So, we're to give
thank you for sticking around this far.
Yep.
We'll do our little goodbye for those people that have to pop out for Iron Flame spoilers.
Right.
But we will have chapter 19 up soon.
Very soon.
Yeah, we're literally at this and start recording chapter 19. And follow us on all the things. Rate, review, comment, like, follow, subscribe. And thank you so much.
And 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you still there? No. Good. Okay, so Iron Flame contact for chapter 18.
You were writing down a lot of stuff.
I actually,
I had one little thing.
A couple more kind of came to mind. So the first thing is going back to the timeline of this chapter when we're back in the Scribe Quadrant. I'm going back to my composure argument about why the scribes have to have such composure. I totally understood what you were saying about, like, if you're a scribe, you are invisible. You are just dedicated your life to history and the text, and that is only the important thing. Yeah. Especially with, like, the similarities of the maesters in Game of Thrones. Yeah. Totally get that. But even still then, Sam has a life. Even his other, like, people, like, have, like...
Well, he's not supposed to have a kid.
He's not supposed to, but, I mean, they still have, like, emotions. They still do things, and they're not just, like, statues who just, like, grab books. Right, they're not robots. So, I hear that part. But for the composure part of where everyone is so, like, stiff and uptight and, like, you know, mum's the word.
Like, they can't hug.
Can't even hug.
City is not supposed to smile.
Not even smile. Like, I think this is Markham's doing. I think Markham, when he took over the Scribe Quadrant, however many years ago, I think that when Markham took over, and he knows everything, because obviously we're covering Iron Flame, so he is the traitorous SOB that he is. Yeah. I think one of my theories is that Markham is responsible for Violet's dad's death of some capacity, and he runs a tight ship in the Scribe Quadrant because he is the number one person of putting out propaganda to stop from information, controlling the info. He is probably like second in command of whatever conspiracy theory cabal, if you will, that's happening at Basgaiath. Yeah. So I think he is in that realm, and if he is, like, hey, you're the main guy for the Scribe Quadrant, keep your pawns in a row. Whatever that phrase is. Keep your ducks in a row.
What did you say?
Pawns.
Like in chess?
Yeah.
I mean pawns because they're, like, part of the game.
So, I think
So you think it only started with Markham?
I think
not
the whole...
like ye old scribe lore?
I think even in ye old scribe world, they still have to, like, be the role of the scribes and record history. But the fact of them being, you can't even smile.
It's gotten more, like,
you can't have any emotions because we don't want you to be attached to any of the riders, because if they go off in another rebellion, you can't be putting out information we don't want. Right. Okay. So I think Markham has kind of, and that within this chapter, I think has a little bit of proof and evidence when Markham shows up in between Jasenia and Violet. I'm just getting the whole, like, Markham's here, like, we don't know why, but we have to, like, stop talking because he doesn't want us to be talking.
And it's kind of like, you know, he's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. But not just that, not just, like, you know, Professor Snape scary.
Right,
like,
or
just
like Devil Wears Prada.
Right, yeah.
Miranda Priestley scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's, like, actually abusive.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, that was what I had for Iron Flame in that scene. Okay. What was your Iron Flame context?
It was just the Tingle watch. Okay. Because it's right before they talk about Jeremiah being an Intrinsic. And it just connects it in your brain there. And, you know, she feels a tingle in her scalp, and I don't even need to turn around to know that, you know, Zayden's looking at me. And I'm like, yeah, we get it, you're tingly. But then, you know, the theory that it's Zayden reading her intentions because he's a type of intrinsic. And then right after that, they're like, no, he can read our minds. And I'm like, I wonder what that feels like. You know, does it feel tingly by chance?
Right.
So that's all I had, really.
Obviously, with the Iron Flame context of Zayden's intrinsic that is learned in Iron Flame, and then moving and then going back into this chapter, Zayden has that firsthand experience of what Jeremiah is going through because Zayden had a very similar type of feeling. But he talks about in Iron Flame of how he was able to really control it and hide it from Carr and Markham and those people. So he did a really good job of hiding it and secluding it. So how did he do that? Because Jeremiah has such a visceral reaction to it.
I think there's different types of intrinsics.
Sure.
Because you could argue that Dane's a type of intrinsic.
True.
Right, but to get his power, he has to put hands on someone's face. Sounds like Jeremiah's was like, you get everything, free range, you don't...
No limitations.
Maybe you could learn to control it, but there's no, like, method to, like, turn it on, to, like, access it. It just happens, and you get access to everything.
Yeah.
Whereas Zayden's is only to people's intentions. Not all your knowledge. Which your intentions could give you a lot of information, because it would also be like, my intention is to do this. Well, why would you do that? Oh, you must have certain knowledge of something. But it seems like he has to, like, access it. It's not just, like, free flowing to him. And then I also wonder if it's like his second signet, a secondary one, if that makes a difference in the power of it, because his primary one is the shadows, and then the secondary one from the what's his name's dragon, his second signet that he gets from the
No, I understand what you're saying, but
we think it's because his grandpa
also bonded
to Gale.
Correct.
But then there's another theory that it's from the Rebellion relic.
Okay. So that theory's out there, but that's not like a confirmed theory.
And I mean neither. Well, it being from his grandpa is just like a theory. It's Zayden's theory.
It's also Violet's, because Violet in Iron Flame like calls him out on it. Like, it's a known thing where if you have, because it's a very rare thing for a dragon to bond against a relative,
right.
And that usually translates into a signet because of how strong the connection is and how strong the bond is. So that would form a second signet.
Yeah, but that was like the rumor has it. I'm also saying, because in the next chapter when they mention something else and then directly talk about his rebellion relic, I feel like it could be a dragon egg.
It could.
That.
Which then kind of opens a Pandora box of, do all the rebellions have a second signet?
Right, have a second signet.
Yikes.
And it may not be necessarily an individual one, but that's why that they have the power to, like, cloak their conversations kind of thing from the other guy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The only thing that would maybe poke at that bubble would be, just to clarify, who gives them their rebellion relics? Who gave it to them? Wasn't it Melgren?
Melgren.
So
it's from Melgren's dragon.
But if Melgren or... What do you mean, not really?
Their rebellion marks are from the stone that they all held.
They are?
In their hand.
From Iron Flame?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just can't remember.
That's why there's still questions, because at one point we thought it was somehow marked from
Melgren's
dragon, and then they would get a second signet from that dragon.
Right.
And then we thought it's from the stone from when their parents died, and they held on to that rune. So it could also just be like a rune power. So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
When we're rereading this Fourth Wing, I'm thinking of the Rebellion relic, second signet, and it may not be in the same way of like a signet is from a dragon. It might just be they have like a relic power.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? Like it somehow transferred from, or not relic, that rune into their relic on their arm, and it gave them some other type of power. But I know that they're also like, no, it's because the Sigil bonded with whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talk about second signets in the terms of Violet because of a second dragon and blah, 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 all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a lot of like multiple powers out there and a lot of talk about getting power not through a dragon, which we know Xaden ends up doing as well. Mm-hmm. So I'm not necessarily saying it's from a dragon, but it could just be another power from some other source.
Sure.
So that is what I think also makes his intrinsic different, is because it's not like his primary signet power. And that somehow, I think he's also just like a really powerful magic guy and can kind of will himself. I mean, he has a really like strong will to like go through what he's been through and to like just muscle through and will himself to not go crazy. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah.
That it's not from a dragon is what makes it different. And it's the only mind reading for intentions, not mind reading like free willing.
And to kind of support that theory, I was going to say, if it was from the dragon, Coda, which is Melgar's dragon, you would think that pirate leadership would kind of know and have an idea. Like, if they gave them a second relic, that might give them a second signet, and why would they do that? Like,
I don't think he did it on purpose.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, like, if it to prove, like, to go along with your theory that it's not from the dragon, it's from something else, I think goes well with the theory that, okay, maybe it's not from the dragon, because if it is, why would they knowingly give them a second signet and have them become more powerful?
Well, I don't think it was knowingly. I think it was like Melgar just got power hungry and was like, I'm going to kill you all, and I'm going to be evil and mark you as a rebellion kid. And then he was like, I didn't think through the consequences, and now it's kind of like a karma thing of like, you did something evil, and it had these consequences, or you didn't know that the evil thing you would do would come back and hurt you because you just were so blinded by like evilness.
That'd be very poetic. If it was that way.
Yeah, kind of like in
but
nature.
It's
like
so stupid on his part.
Oh, I was like, I think that's a great idea because it's also the imbalance where he tried to hurt them, and he did by killing their parents, but then he also gave them another power.
Right.
Oopsies. So I think it could be a whole nature imbalance kind of thing.
Melgar, I didn't know he knew how to do that.
Anything else? You have a couple more.
So I guess just kind of treading backwards a little bit in the chapter. I apologize, but just talking about again with Dane. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about him.
It's fine.
But the whole argument with Violet, like I said previously, is a very threshold moment for Violet. Crossing that barrier, like, it's not that Violet is saying, I don't want us to be a thing anymore. It's like, I don't even want you in my life anymore because you're awful. That, to me, is also a very climactic moment for Dane going into Iron Flame. Because in Iron Flame, you have the whole interrogation scene with Dane and with Violet. But then, I think that also sets him up for the redemption, to redeem himself. To
this part right here.
This part, I think, puts him in Dane's eyes. So, like, how for Violet, it's a threshold moment. It's like peak of the mountain of getting rid of Dane. For Dane, it's the exact opposite. He's at the bottom of the valley in terms of relationship with Violet. Like, he's, like, getting super low, or is low. That is now kind of starting to be, from there on, can try to redeem himself in some sort of way from there on. Because now he kind of has a full idea of how Violet views him. You get a little snippet of that when Jeremiah starts to read Dane's mind very briefly, where Jeremiah vocalizes what Dane is thinking. Violet doesn't realize I'm just trying to help her. I really care for her. Puts it out really quickly. So from that moment, for Dane to redeem himself, he has a lot of work to do. Yeah. And in Iron Flame, he's still not fully redeemable. He's working. He's getting there. Yeah. Does Dane, and this is another common topic we talk about with Dane, moving forward, especially going into Onyx Storm, how does Dane redeem himself? Or does he die? Is he important enough anymore to die? And that is all based off of his relationship with Violet. He cannot just be a second, third type of character who's just there and then die. That's not going to hold any importance if there's no relationship with Violet of any sort, negative or positive. If it's a negative relationship, he turns, we'll just throw out, free ideas. If he turns Venom, if he just goes back to bad guy and joins sides with his dad, who's Colonel, or with Melgren, or positive, he is walking arm in arm with Xaden and Violet and fighting against, all the bad people. Like, there are two ways to it. There's nothing in the middle, too, in terms of fortunes for Dane. Or else, at some point, you're just like, okay, Dane is just going to be, like, disappearing from the book.
Irrelevant ugly.
Maybe. But because of how important he was and how significant he was early on, and for Violet to kind of turn the page of her, character development, crossing thresholds and that sort of deal, I think serve a significant part.
Yeah, it's really a turning point in their relationship. And
there is like that also really awful theory that the whole enemies to lovers thing isn't about Xaden, but it's about Dane to Violet.
That would be a story.
That would be.
Have you seen the one where it's like, what if the real enemies to lovers is Jack and Violet? And we're like, Rebecca, please no.
No.
But yeah.
That was. There's a whole Dane thing about it.
Yeah.
But that's all I've got for my Iron Flame stuff. We covered it all.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's the show.
That is the show.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you on the flip side for chapter 19.
Not the flip side.
Yeah, we gotta flip the page to get to chapter 19. Got you. What a dad joke.
Okay, bye.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.